Hey everyone, Brian Bickness here.
Matt Gatsky.
So we're here today, we're gonna go over gin poles, right? So we've got these shiny new little baby gin poles that we're gonna try to figure out what the heck can I use this thing for and the proper way to go about it. So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about what actually gin poles are?
You know, typically when we think of a gin pole, I'm thinking of, a large device, a large pole that's put, up on the tower to give us headroom above our highest fixed point on that structure to raise and lower, equipment and antennas or tower sections. What we're really going to be digging into here is the mini gin pole. The mini gin pole we're using with 2 3/8 Schedule 40 and mass pipes.
Can I use EMT?
Nope. Schedule 40, 2 3/8 is the only thing we're using with the mini gin pole. That's what it's been designed to use to match up here.
Yeah, that's real important because we want to make sure that it's not a 3-inch, not a 4-inch, that this thing's not slopping around, has a tight fit, and also has the capacity. So we'll get into some load charts a little bit later on, but these load charts are based on the wall thickness of the structures that we're going into. So very important to have the right antenna pipe, that this actually goes into.
Yeah, we can't just make anything homemade. This all has to be an engineered piece of equipment, so we understand the limitations of this piece of equipment. It's been tested and rated for us. So we're not making anything homemade. We're going to be using these Tough Tug mini gin poles.
Yeah, Matt brings up a really good point of, in the past, you've seen in the industry where individuals are using homemade devices that, just like Matt alluded to, we don't know what the limitations are unless a structural engineer has actually gone in and done the analysis on what that physical component can handle. We have no idea. So you're keeping your fingers crossed during that lift. So that's why we've gone to these engineered poles.
Right, so can I go out to just any site? We're working, we got to replace an antenna. Can I just take this mini gin pole, just throw it up there and replace any old antenna at any old site? Or are we looking at, a little more?
You could, but you'd be going against the 1048 standard and all things. Wouldn't be a good day. So, but yeah, what Matt's alluding to is getting into rigging plans, right? So we need, just like we do with our regular rigging plans for rigging any type of load, we need to make sure we're doing the same process with this. But now since we're using a gin pole, so we have a double whammy going on. We're using a gin pole and we're rigging on a mount. So behind us here is a mount. It's a typical boom gate. A mount was a QTS F12. What we see out in the industry, very common. And the thing with mounts is a mount is not rated for a physical downforce. It is rated for the weight of the antennas and the items that are going on it. That's what it's engineered to handle, those type of forces. But when we start introducing a downforce into these mounts, there are some new mounts coming out that do have calculated downforce into them, but the majority don't. So we need to look at that additional downforce that we're going to introduce into this mount and run the analysis on it to make sure that we're not bringing this whole thing down. Likewise, we need to make sure the load that we're introducing into the gin poles, we're not going to damage the rigging equipment, the loads, the lines, the pulleys, the blocks, everything. So there's a lot going on. It's not just as simple as Matt alluded to as running out to a site and letting it rip, so to speak.
And so because this is a class 4 plan, before we even think about heading out on site, there's a few things on the back end that have to take place for us to properly use this.
Yeah, that all takes time, right? So it's not just, hey, what do you think about this? And the engineer actually has to review it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So as Matt alluded to, that process needs to happen. So that's going to take anywhere up to a week. So pre-planning is super important by doing this. And that's not only giving the parameters of our gross load of what we're doing. So just like any other plan, we need all the information. We need our center lines, we need our gross load, which includes the weight of the load rope, your rigging, plus the item you're picking. We need to know all the information on the gin pole. That'll all go to that engineer to review and get us that final piece of paper. So once we got that class 4 plan, then what can happen?
And we get that green light good to go, we're out on site now. Before we're even thinking about using this pole, we're taking a look at it, we're inspecting that pole. The pole is inspected by a competent rigger before every single use, and then once yearly by a qualified person, we're also going to do a documented inspection on that pole. While we're inspecting that pole, Brian, what are we looking for?
So, well, even before we get into the inspection, so what we've done traditionally in the past with our other gin poles, what we've done is had a binder that goes with the gin poles. Paper logs, paper things. We're trying to get away from paper because it lives and breathes in the field, and if something needs updated on the back end, we have to shuffle paper back and forth. And so what we've done is we've migrated everything to Salesforce, right? So we use Salesforce for everything else. And so all the information that's required from a 322 perspective. So backing up a little bit, the ANSI A1048 standard says if we're going to use a gin pole, we use a gin pole that meets the 322 standard. So that gets into the design and engineering, what we need to do for poles, and that includes inspection. The things that in addition to inspection are mill certs, the load charts, so critical information that we need to know about this pole. So what you see here is all the information that we have on the pole itself, right? So we put a little shortcut QR code. We'll get into that in a little bit. The serial number, our asset ID number, and right here even says this gin pole must be accompanied with an approved Class 4 rigging plan and documented inspection prior to use. So that inspection, we don't have a paper form, so we made it really simple. All we need to do is take your phone, QR code in, and that'll bring up a really nice interface, and we'll show you that next. So QR code inspection, we've, like I said, handy dandy little shortcut here that you can use with your device, your mobile device. So Matt's gonna show us that, but before he does that, we need to get in some curls for the girls. This thing's not light, multi-purpose. I can do about 10, Kraut can do probably 2 or 3 at the max.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the camera on my phone here. I'm going to bring that right to the QR code and click the link. That's going to open up here. I'm going to click open so it opens on my Salesforce One app. Now, right on here, this is where you'll see what we have laid out, and I'm just going to click inspections here, and then I'm going to click new, and that's going to open up a new inspection form here where you can see all what we're looking for here, the pipes, the bracing, the welds, the torques. We're going all the way through, and then a pass fail and a comment spot, and we can just hit save. Now, on that same page, that's where we also have the files. The files is where you'll find that load chart, the mill certs, and the weld inspection. So that all comes right from that QR link right to your Salesforce app.
Yeah, so you'll have everything, per the 322 rather, and the 1048, everything right in the palm of your hand via your mobile device. So pretty slick little way to do that. So I went over some high-level inspection points. Matt's actually going to dive in a little deeper on the pole itself and walk you through what we look at for inspection.
So on the pole itself, the first thing I'm really looking at is just the overall condition of the pole itself. Is there anything standing out at this? It's bent maybe. So, I'm looking here, seeing this is nice and straight. I'm going into my welds here, running along the top, making sure I've got no cracks in there. Welds running along the backside here as well, no cracks. And my welds right around here where this is gonna mate with the mast pipe. So I'm gonna check all these welds, and I'm gonna take a look at my sheath. I wanna make sure this sheath spins freely. It's not wobbling and bouncing around or squealing real loud and talking to me. That's a sign that there's an issue going on here. I like to look in it as well and see there's no, deep grooves worn in this or sharp metal burrs standing up, anything that could potentially damage my rope throughout this sheath. I'm gonna take a look here at my bolts running through the backside where the nuts here. We can see these two have torque marks. So I wanna see that those torque marks match up. The back two here do not have torque marks because they're welded in place. So I wanna visually inspect those and see that they are secured.
So one other thing too that we're going to mention is on mast pipes, right? This does drop into a mast pipe, and part of that mast pipe, that's now becomes part of your structural component that we're rigging to. So a key thing on this is to ensure that the mast pipe has 2 points of contact. So when you get into some monopoles or some platforms, there may or may not be 2 points of contact, and what I mean by that is if we look at this particular monopole here, so there's a point of contact right here, point of contact right here. Some mounts may have just one point of contact through with the mast pipe centered. That is a recipe for disaster where it can tip right over. If we introduce force and one point of contact, that antenna mast can tip right over and you're having a bad day. So 2 points of contact on all your sleeves. Okay, so next we're going to get into actual rigging of this mini gym pole. Our traditional rope end termination looks like this, right? With our Sherlock, our self-closing lock hook, the master link ring, and a thimble. Now, unfortunately, we need to talk to Joey about this, but to introduce the rope, you either have to take this nut off, which I'm not a fan of, and the sheath can pop out, or just undo your rope termination to get it through. So we're gonna do that now, and we'll be right back. So we got the rope now rigged through the rooster head gin pole, and what we've done actually is eliminated the master link setup because headroom is critical. That's why we're using a gin pole to create space. And when we start putting in things like master links and longer knots and bigger hooks, we lose that headroom, right? So we've gone ahead and eliminated the master link and just put our Sherlock hook. So this termination can be, you know, we're about to have about a foot really to where our rigging starts. So what you want to do is make sure you're rigging it through so that the load line going to your heel block or down to the cat head is towards the tower, or excuse me, toward the pipe. And then the end of your rope is on the outside of the rooster head. Okay, so that's rigged up like that. Now what we're doing is, this configuration that we have comes down to the end of the rope. To hoist this up, before I hoist it, what I want to do is simply just wrap this around the pole itself, just so we're not pushing in on this knot. So I'm going to go ahead and just go one time, right around here, right back to itself, close it, and now I'm ready to hoist this up the tower, right? Again, disclaimer, we're in our training center, just working down here at the ground, just showing you guys this so we don't have our PPE on like we traditionally would out on a site. But we have our trolley block set up on the gin pole, and this is how we're gonna raise it up. So, because we already have a class 4 plan engineered on the mount, we can go ahead and lift our system into place on the mount. You know, traditionally we would have the headroom that we can rig on the structure, but because we need this pole, we obviously need the headroom, so we don't have it for rigging, so we need to rig to our mount to get this up there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up to mat. And again, limited space here, but we'll be coming up, hoisting that up, all the way up to mat on your trolley line.
All right, now I'll take this mini gin pole here. I'm gonna take this, bring this up, put this in my mast pipe. Now, watch right here, when you're installing this in this mast pipe, when this mini gin pole comes and mates, that's a major pinch point right there. So watch your hands when you're installing this right here. Once I get my mini gin pole in the mast pipe here, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my tie back rope here and just get this untangled. And I'm gonna bring this right back to the tower and secure this to the tower. Loosen this just by holding the backside of this rope, pushing that forward, bring this right back to my tower. And then what I'm gonna do is take and pull the opposite direction on this knot until we can cinch this in nice and tight.
That concludes part 1 of 2 parts of this video series. So there's actually part 2 of 2 on the next link. So make sure you head over there to finish this gym pole video. Thanks everyone.